Reports have continued to grow about OG Anunoby's unhappiness in Toronto, but if he continues to perform as well as this, the Raptors cannot afford to lose him in the offseason. The last two games from OG Anunoby have just been sensational. The great play from Friday's game against the Lakers really transitioned over to the Tuesday night game against the Denver Nuggets as well. Against the Los Angeles Lakers, OG Anunoby may have had one of the best games of his career with 31 points on 12 for 14 shooting, including starting 11 for 11 from the field. He was 3 of 6 from 3 and had a whopping 5 steals. Now, even though the Denver game yesterday wasn't as impressive for the player, he still put up 24 points on more hyper-efficient shooting 10 of 14 from the field and 4 of 8 from 3. OG lately has been on an absolute tear, and this is the part of the season where the Raptors really need the player to step up in their bid to solidify their spot in the play-in tournament. They want to be one of the teams in the 7th or 8th spot, had that double elimination rather than the 9th or 10th seed where you have to win back-to-back games in order to get into the NBA playoffs. OG Anunoby can be a key part of what the Raptors do this season, though at the trade deadline, it very much seemed like he wasn't going to be a key part of this team. In fact, it seemed like he was not going to be a part of this team at all. And before we go any further into this episode, want to let you guys know that this episode is sponsored by the Queensway Automotive Group, and we're going to talk about them a little bit later on in the show. But OG Anunoby at the trade deadline, all signs were pointing towards him being traded. The Raptors seemingly were going to be sellers at the trade deadline, mainly with OG Anunoby. Just about every team in the NBA would want a player like Anunoby, but there are certain specific teams who really had a keen interest in bringing in one of the best defensive players in the league, a very good three-point shooter to go along with it, and somebody when on form who can get downhill and finish at the rim as well. The Memphis Grizzlies had some keen interest. The New Orleans Pelicans had some keen interest as well, but ultimately no trade materialized for the Raptors when Masai Ujiri held firm on his valuation of the player. The Raptors wanted 3 first-round picks, yes, and those were offered, but they also wanted a young player to go along with those picks. That is something that other teams were not willing to give up in February, though Masai Ujiri believes many of the best analysts as it comes to trades around the NBA believe whatever you can get in February for a player, you can get better than that in June, July, August, in the offseason when teams have a little bit more time to prepare for their games and tinker their roster just to make everything fit in as best as possible. They weren't willing to do that with OG at the trade deadline, so the Raptors held on to the player, and rather they stayed as buyers, which put them in this position where they need to win as many games as possible going through the rest of the season, and OG was a significant part of yesterday's win against the Denver Nuggets, as we spoke about previously. OG this season, Nick Nurse has, sung his praises recently about how good of a defender OG is. And when the Raptors were really fighting for a playoff spot and weren't kind of falling off the pace a little bit, conversations were around OG Anunoby being the defensive player of the year. He was in the top 3 for quite a while until the Raptors fell off, then he got injured. He's not really in the race for that award anymore, but still lurking around in the fringes of that conversation, and people are taking note of OG's defense, especially with the fact that he is currently leading the NBA in steals with 2 steals per game. If OG Anunoby is going to play anything like he did in the last 2 games for the Raptors, then yes, this is a player that you want on your team for the future. This is a player that just fits into any team in the NBA. Every team is looking for a player just like OG, and the way he's played this season has been great from a statistical perspective. Even though the points per game is down very slightly, we've seen a big jump in some other categories. He's averaging 16.7 points per game this season with 5.2 rebounds. Like I said, an NBA leading 2 steals per game, going on with a field goal percentage of .467, a .372 3-point percentage, and he's really upped his free throw percentage this season, going above 83% at this particular juncture of the season. OG, we know how good of a player that he is, but that's where additional problems have been erased from the player's perspective, which have transitioned over to the team perspective as well. Before we go any further in this video, I want to tell you guys more about the Queensway Automotive Group. This is a great group of young entrepreneurs who operate an automotive dealer group with brands like Volkswagen, Mazda, Mitsubishi, and more on the way. On top of that, they have over 150 pre-owned cars that range from prices of $10,000 all the way up to $250,000. When you support the Queensway Automotive Group with my special link that I put in the description of this video, you're also supporting me personally. Support the people that support me, and in turn, you're supporting this community of great Raptors fans that we have here at Amateur Hour Sports. Now, with OG Anunoby, we know about all the great things about the player. I don't need to go through all these things extensively because we know OG fits this team really well. He's an important part of the Raptors' future. That is, if he wants to be a part of the Raptors' future. The rumors of OG Anunoby's unhappiness with the organization, with his role specifically within the organization, go all the way back to the most recent offseason, especially right before the NBA draft, as rumors were heating up about OG's discontent with his position and his role in Toronto. Right before the draft, there were offers coming in. Apparently, the Portland Trail Blazers were offering up the 7th overall pick, which eventually became Shaedon Sharpe, for OG Anunoby's services on their team. As the Portland Trail Blazers look to go all in on this season, the Raptors refused and really diffused all of these notions that OG was unhappy. But as we got towards this trade deadline, once again, the rumors of the dissatisfaction with OG Anunoby's role, his specific dissatisfaction, came up again, which led to almost trading him at this most recent trade deadline, though he has remained in the team. And I will say, even though there was a bit of a rough patch coming back from injury where he looked like his energy levels were low and his engagement in the game were very low, we can definitely chalk that up at this point to a player recovering from an injury, getting back up to speed, getting his legs under him, getting actual jumps on his jump shots. As these things started to come for the player, we're once again seeing the 3-and-D specialist that we have within our team. Now, I will not say at this point, though, that the discontent that OG has with his role has completely vanished. And this is where the problems really come in for the Toronto Raptors. OG in his current role is excellent. He fits this team very, very well. This is a player that every team in the NBA could use, specifically the Toronto Raptors, who already have him on their team. But if he wants to see a role increase, then we are going to have some problems, because as much as I love OG Anunoby, this is not a player that deserves a role increase. Just from a specific eye test watching OG play, this is somebody who thrives getting downhill to the rim, more specifically on catch and shoot 3-point opportunities. When he's tasked with creating his own shot, that's where problems have arisen for his game, and that's where problems have arisen for the Raptors offense in general. When the Raptors want to get OG in his bag, creating shots for himself, let's say in mid-range, it's just rather ugly watching all of that unfold. His handles aren't that tight, doesn't really have a lot of moves that he can go to, and even though the mid-range percentage this season is 39%, which is, by the way, very, very, very bad from an analytical standpoint, where this situation worsens is where you go deeper into these statistics. I saw a really interesting graphic here from NBA University on Twitter, a great account that I think everybody who likes basketball should follow for the information they provide. And one of the recent showcases of information was for OG Anunoby. Specifically, it was the least efficient players in the NBA as it comes to isolation possessions. And top of the list, rather unfortunately, is OG Anunoby. In isolation this season, he is averaging 0.7 points per possession. Now, of the qualifying players involved here, you have to have at least 2 isolation possessions per game on average, which OG Anunoby fits. I mean, some of the other crazy ones on this list, like how is Jeff Green on this list in 2023? How is Rudy Gay on this list in 2023? But regardless of all that, OG Anunoby is at the top of this list. And I can't say that I'm very, very surprised here. I mean, like I said, I've seen it. He's just not a player that can create for himself. What OG Anunoby does best is play defense, shoot threes, and in specific scenarios, he can get downhill and finish quite well at the rim. He's a very strong person for his size, and he moves very well for his size, which provides him additional opportunities at the rim. But when he's in isolation, creating his own shot, that is where trouble, clearly, evidently, showcased by these statistics here, that is where problems have come for the player. Yet still, despite these issues, he wants to have a bigger role. He doesn't think he's going to get that with the Raptors, so he wants to go to another team where he can get that role. Well, the teams that are interested in him, that had the most interest around the trade deadline, seemingly were the Memphis Grizzlies and the New Orleans Pelicans. Now, I understand the Pelicans have fallen off the face of the earth with the way their season is going, currently the 12th seed at the time of recording. That is likely a team where his role is going to shrink. And I think if you go to the Grizzlies, it'll be even worse because he won't get as many touches as John Morant. He won't get as many touches as Desmond Bane. This is another spot where he's also going to struggle to have a bigger role. Another team that was interested was the Indiana Pacers. Now, if OG just wants, free license to do whatever he wants in the game and create for himself, with respect to Indiana, that is definitely a place where he can go and get those extra touches. But that's not a team that's going to likely be a significant contender in any sort of playoff positioning for the next couple of years. I mean, Tyrese Halliburton, I'm all in on how good that guy is, but the team in general is not at the level of a team that is going to be competing for legitimate playoff positioning. I don't mean any disrespect to the Pacers when I say that. That is just how I see that particular team. So if OG wants to remain on a competitive team, he's not going to get that role increase. If he goes to a team that is not going to be competitive, sure, he can see that role increase. And you know what? For a player who's trying to earn himself a new contract, maybe that makes sense for his career. I mean, after all, he's already got a ring. He's already got his championship. Doesn't really need to be chasing any sort of success from a team perspective. He should be chasing stuff for his wall. I understand the player wanting to go and do that for himself. If he wants to do that with another team, sure. But as far as what the Raptors do, we see the decrease in quality as a whole from the Raptors defense when he is not in the game. The way he can defend every position, going from defending point guard to defending centers, like he was defending Nikola Jokic yesterday and doing a very good job of that. Even got praise from Denver coach Michael Malone for his defense on Jokic in the matchups between the Raptors and the Nuggets. He is a significant part of what the Raptors want to achieve as a team and as a group. It's just up to him if he wants to be here. I want OG Anunoby to be a part of this team for the long term. I have a lot of belief in his talent. Even if this is like the best OG Anunoby will ever be. Hey, 17 points per game on very efficient shooting while allowing everybody else, the better players in the team, to express themselves while playing like arguably the best perimeter one-on-one defense in the NBA, leading the league in steals. That is fine. If this is the best he's ever going to be, that is fine. But I don't want a player here who does not want to be here. So if it's true, if OG has expressed his dissatisfaction playing in Toronto, his role in Toronto, and you can get 3 first-round picks and a young player in exchange for him, well, I think that's a no-brainer from a Raptors perspective. You add in a young player, let's say Memphis, you get Santi Aldama, you get 3 first-round picks. That supplements your depth. Those draft picks, they supplement your depth even further, and you have a starting 5, very possibly, of Fred VanVleet, Gary Trent Jr., Scotty Barnes, Pascal Siakam, Jakob Poeltl. That doesn't sound bad at all. Would I rather OG Anunoby be on this team? Yes. I don't want a player here who doesn't want to be here. So if he doesn't, and you can get a very good trade offer, that is something that I believe the Toronto Raptors should pursue. But we don't quite know at what cost that will come. In the times that he's been injured in his playing days with the Raptors, and there's been quite a few times he's been injured. He's prone to getting some injuries here and there. The Raptors defense has clearly suffered from a statistical standpoint and from a watching perspective. You can see the defense is worse without Anunoby on this team. They'll have to do a bunch of things to circumvent that and adapt without him on the team, if that is to come. But I would say at this point, based on how last offseason went, based on how this season is going, and how things went down closer to the trade deadline, I would expect OG Anunoby, unfortunately, to be on a new team this season. We'll only have to wait and see at what cost that will come to the Raptors and their future. What do you guys think of this video? Let me know your thoughts and opinions on OG Anunoby's situation in the comments down below, because that is it for me. Drop a like if you enjoyed, and remember to subscribe to Amateur Sports for videos and content just like this, live stream watch parties for Raptors games, and I've added in a bunch of YouTube short content that you don't want to miss. Get subscribed, help us on the road to 14,000 subs, and join the Amateur Hour Army today.